do we think that interactive video is really considered part of enterprise streaming, or will it, or where do we think the market's going there?
I think absolutely it is, right? So the expectation of the enterprise consumer, the corporate employee, is very much one of interactivity. Employee engagement is considered to be driven by the feedback and the interactivity that you get from your employee base, and even in marketing webinars, the same thing applies, is creating an interactivity which differentiates consumption of video and audio in the enterprise from standard TV streaming. Right? There is a high degree of interactivity. That's what drives engagement. So yeah, I think that's absolutely the case, and it has been the case for many, many years. It's even in the early days of when webcasting was your primary way of getting content to a large audience on your enterprise or webinars. It was very much a forefront, both in enterprise communications, but also in education. For example, CPE. I'm being checked that I'm watching the stream and have to confirm that I'm there, and I'm having to answer questions in order to qualify that I've gone through that sort of course or anything. So I think the problem is in the future more related to the amount of content that there is available on the enterprise, the amount of meetings that have been streamed, the amount of video that people are attending, even when they're in the office and hybrid and external to the office as a result of COVID. And so how do you keep people's attention? How do you make it easy for them to ingest that content in a quick way? And things like the Microsoft Cockpit, is it? Yeah. Copilot that's coming out is very much like, I'm going to get my summary in 5 minutes. I'm attending the meeting because I want to register, or I want to be seen. I want to have my name there. When they do the roll call at the end, I can tick the box that I was an attendee. But I'm actually multitasking. I'm doing something else entirely, maybe listening to see if something relevant to me is called out, and therefore I'm not really consuming the content. So I think what is next is, how can I create that attention, or if I'm not having the attention, how can I catch up on what's being said? That was rather a long ramble there. But
that's okay. Simon always says good things, so people listen when he talks. Olga?
Well, I fully agree, and part of interactivity is making it also interesting to consume. If we all sit here and lecture at people, it's going to be one very boring panel, and not having people be involved in this. That's why people ask questions and all of that. But that obviously translates into any sort of corporate, or hopefully translates into any sort of corporate world and any sort of educational streaming that one does, because outside of that, it becomes monotonous and boring, and you lose attention. Because we were talking about as a pre-call that attention spans are, yay big when you have to, and, as evident by the fact that as you're looking at something online, it says, oh, it's a 3-minute read or a 2-minute video, and you're like, do I have time for that? And that becomes sad, but if you don't have any feedback, you're just talking into a blank screen of nothingness, and that absolutely has to be the case.
I think, and on top of all that, the other challenge that we're all facing now is the expectation, not just of engaging content. I think that's always been a thing, is the expectation of what the tech is capable of doing. And I think that was one of the, I hate to say benefits of COVID, but everybody overnight, you all know, you're on Zoom now, you're on Teams, or you as an organization are having to figure out how that technology works, and you're all kind of in it together. It brought us together in a really weird kind of way. But with that, now everybody knows what is capable with those tools. And now that folks are starting to get back to their offices, whether it be hybrid or mandatory work from the office certain days a week, whatever, going back to those conferencing centers, those multi-divisible rooms where the tech didn't really change because it didn't have to. Everyone was focusing on getting the virtual side of the house up and running. So now that they're in there, they're like, well, we want to do a hybrid meeting here with Teams or with Zoom or whatever the case may be. And I'm like, well, that's not what this room was designed for. So now the big challenge is how are we going to be augmenting those spaces to accommodate those use cases? And I couldn't have agreed more with this morning's keynote of we have to redesign all of our infrastructure with that modularity so that you change from a Zoom house to a Microsoft house, whatever, the tech still works. And if you come in where you've got a guest speaker and they want to use Zoom or again, whichever platform you're not using, that's not going to be a problem. You can still make everything work there.
See, but the interesting thing about the hybrid meetings is you also have to think about the user experience. And the user experience from a perspective of people in the room, but also people outside of the room. And think about how you organize all those meetings and keep it so that there are no misunderstandings, that people in the room have the same experience as the virtual folks. And I think that's some of the things that people don't think about until they run into a problem of what do you do and how do you make sure that if something is said here, it is obviously addressed to the room or to the Zoom crowd, and everybody sees and feels exactly the same way. And I think that is a whole other human aspect of what we have to figure out as well.